Hello, everyone. Here we are with Teja once more doing our third conversation in this series of 8. This is so exciting. Today we're talking about a topic that it's sad, but it's exciting to be talking about it because for us to change the healthcare system, we need to talk about the problems. So we're going to be talking about stigmas in the healthcare system. And I don't know, maybe we'll leave it limited to the healthcare system. Maybe we'll make it even broader and talk about stigmas in society, stigmas within the wellness communities. Maybe we'll talk about stigmas in schools. Let's see where this leads us. But we'll start with the stigma within the healthcare system. Teja, she is in the UK. She is studying master in pharmacy. I think, Teja, you're still 21. You'll tell us in a moment. She is very active, a very active member of the community in London, in England, and internationally. She runs the young adult FND support group through FND Hope. She's doing research. She does tons of volunteering. She's studying super hard. She's also a singer, composer. Oh my God, she's amazing. Me, I'm just a doctor.
No.
I'm Dr. Velázquez. I am doing FND education, prevention, healing, and trying to collaborate to this social movement in whatever manner I can. So Teja, tell us a bit about you, whatever you want to share today, because you have already introduced yourself a couple times before in the previous videos. Tell us whatever you want to share today about you, and then let's start talking about a stigma.
Yeah, I think you covered most things. I'm in the UK. I'm studying pharmacy and prescribing. I've been an FND patient for about 4 years. And it's interesting that we're talking about stigma because it's something I've experienced as a patient, and also kind of witnessed, in the healthcare system when I worked as a nursing assistant or, in my own pharmacy education. So I feel like I bring two perspectives of like someone who's been a patient in the system, but then also like seen it as kind of not a provider per se, but someone who's worked in the system. And I think we all have our own stigmas and biases, and that's also important to be aware of and bring that perspective.
Wow, you're so efficient. You said so much. Number one, I really like how you're saying, hey guys, it's not only the healthcare system, guys, girls, gals, it's everyone. We all
Yeah.
have our perceptions, our biases, our stories, our expectations. So, okay, let's be honest. It's not only the healthcare system, but the healthcare system is so important because that's where we go for healing.
And the impact as well, right? It can really affect outcomes.
Yes. So if a stigma is there, instead of healing us, it can hurt us. It
Mhm.
can make us worse. It doesn't provide the service that is meant to provide. And then you're saying that you have two important perspectives. For 4 years, the perspective of a service user, client of the healthcare system, and the perspective you're studying, you're becoming a provider,
Mhm.
pharmacist, and you were already a nursing assistant. So check with yourself, with your body, with your emotions, with your mind, and see where do you want to go first. And always we're observing the energy within, and we use these conversations as a way of mobilizing energy and put it to good use. So tell us wherever you want to go now.
I think the direction or the word that comes to mind in terms of energy is culture. Um, of so much I feel of stigma against FND can stem from from culture within with a specific medical community. And I think it can begin with it not being taught about in training, in like when someone isn't a provider, when they're in school. So then their first exposure to FND patients is so dependent on other providers' perception, rather than the actual scientific understanding. And that's where culture can really play a role in how providers perceive FND patients. And I've experienced that as a patient, where in certain communities or in certain hospitals and units, there is the sense of stigma that I've experienced kind of universally. But then there's also been providers that I feel like, I'm thinking of a specific example of a nurse in a unit that I felt was really had a fundamental misunderstanding and stigma against me because of my FND, but she really didn't. And it was really apparent to me that she was unique and stood out. And I don't know, I know what made it feel like she stood out, but I don't know what about her experiences and her education, um, you know, led her to be different than some of the other providers. But the reason I say this is it's not so much an individual's fault, but rather the lack of exposure in the education process. And then kind of this thing that gets perpetuated, because if they're informed by people before them, then that's how they inform others. And it's no one's intention to be misinformed or to be biased. But it definitely can become a thing within a unit or within a hospital or within a practice, that that is not intentional on an individual's part, but kind of becomes more widespread.
Yeah, and yes, exactly. Wow, so many important points. Before we dissect all the important points that you have brought up, I think I would like us to use one specific example and use this example for us to to gain perspective on what we're talking about, because maybe some people don't understand what we're talking about. So by especially if a healthcare professional comes across this video and he's like, what stigma are these people talking about? Okay, so let's start thinking about an example. And then from this example, let's dissect what they did, our perception, how what happened affects us emotionally,
Mhm.
physically, mentally. The impact of that example in our organism. And we could even go a little bit further if time allows and you feel that it's being useful. How that event, and we're talking about one event out of millions worldwide now, right now, that could be happening, how one event can influence an organism, a person, a human
Mhm.
being through time. The event doesn't stay there in the past. The event has a, a an influence that goes beyond and across time. So let's
Mhm.
start with an example, Teja. What comes to mind to your organism as a memory?
It's hard because I feel like I have so many. I'm
Feel
trying
the
to.
body. Yeah, feel the
Yeah.
body. Let's use the body for this one.
I think
Lower.
the example
Huh.
that comes to mind, it actually isn't about me. Um, it was, so I was working as a nurse assistant, and there was a patient with functional dissociative seizures, who that wasn't why they were admitted. Um, and I overheard some of the nurses talking about an event that had occurred, and how they had ended up calling not they had ended up escalating, and then they were kind of laughing about it and kind of making fun of the patient in a way, and how they knew it was, not epileptic or I don't know the right term, but it was a functional seizure and not another type of seizure. And then they were kind of laughing about examples of which they've kind of like caught patients in that way, as if they were like intentionally. And to them, it was funny, it was very much like a laughing thing. So yeah, that's the example that comes to mind.
Yes. Now let's feel a little bit emotions, sensations, like in my body. I feel discomfort in my own body. I'm noticing a restlessness. I'm noticing like my hands are sweating. I'm feeling guilty emotionally. So because I'm a healthcare professional, right? I've gone through things like this, conversations with my colleagues and stuff like that. How is it being for you in your own body, in your own emotions? Recall this event. The nurses were making fun of the patient, suggesting with their jokes that they were making up, that they were creating this state of seizures, uncontrollable seizures. The person is in the
Mhm.
hospital and they are making fun and suggesting that it was being voluntarily created. Hmm.
Um, I think at the like what's making me think back is also a sense of guilt, um, that I didn't say something in that moment. You know what I mean? Like I feel like a little discomfort at my own actions of not verbalizing why I disagreed with what they were doing. But there was also a power dynamic of me being a nursing assistant floating to their unit. I didn't even know them. And also not being a nurse, right? In terms of like the power hierarchy. But I do feel like a sense of shame. Like I feel like kind of in my stomach of like, why didn't I say, why didn't I like, advocate for that patient? And it's also kind of making me think about my own experiences as a patient of hearing providers laugh about me when they thought I couldn't hear. You know what I mean? And that thought of like, what if the patient could hear? Because I know exactly how that feels.
Wow, Teja, so much awareness of your own experience and so much awareness of emotions and their physical representation. And I wonder, where is this leading us? Because when we look at neuroscience, we know that the body give us signals and sensations and emotions to guide us to novel, innovative, creative, empowered ways, because the planet and we are in constant evolution. Evolution, future, better, bigger, more amazing. So all these things that we're feeling are lead us somewhere amazing. But the journey can start, as I said, I'm feeling restless, I'm feeling guilt. And look, our experience is similar. You also
Mhm.
felt in your stomach some guilt, some shame, and maybe other emotions associated with your own experience as a patient. So as you explore, breathing, taking time, as you explore your good nature, your power, as you trust your emotions and your sensations, you're asking yourself, your body, well, if this happens in the future, in my work as a pharmacy student, in my work while I'm doing the practices and the clinicals there, in the young adult support group, when I go to my next appointment, routine checkup, and something like that happens, what would be something that me, my body, my emotions, my energy could do respectfully, respecting the hierarchies, respecting authority, but honoring these evolutionary forces that are born within me. So take your time, feel, think, imagination. What could be a possibility?
It's interesting because instinctively, I was viewing the discomfort at thinking of that interaction as discomfort on their part. But I think there is a certain amount of discomfort in their actions. There's a certain amount of discomfort at my own actions of not saying something. You know what I mean? I think it's twofold. And I hadn't considered, my own part in that discomfort. And I hear what you're saying. If that discomfort is an indicator that I would probably feel differently about this interaction if I had said something. And another part of me, there's this voice in the back of my head that feels uncomfortable with the thought of saying something, because while it certainly feels like the right thing to do based off of my experiences and what I know to be true about FND, and being, a kind and caring healthcare provider, there's another part of me that's like, I don't want them to think of me differently because they clearly have that bias. And if I come from that perspective, there is, a risk that they figure out, or through the course of the conversation, I let them know that I have FND, and that might bias or reduce the respect for me as a healthcare provider. And that's something really difficult to reconcile, because the only way around that is not to hide the fact that I have FND, right? But then it's also something that would impact or could potentially impact people's perceptions of me in the healthcare community. So I don't know how to reconcile those two things.
Yes, and reconciling big actions, movements, thoughts, experiences is a process that may take minutes, weeks, or months, right? It's not something, because you're talking about really important things. The first step in reconciling is recognizing the opposing, contrasting forces, right? It's like with a puzzle. The first thing, you look at one piece, you look at the other. Okay, let me see how they fit together. So you're doing that, and this is amazing. And I want to point out the importance of you teaching people, whoever is going to come across the video, teaching other patients, normal human beings who are not sick but have power within, energy, who are alive. Because there are many things currently wrong in the world, starting with climate change, pollution, destruction, wars, and all our energy can lead us to being better. So this is so important what you're teaching the world with this video, with your example. Let's look at the two contrasting energies. One is like, I should say something. I should change the world. I should bring more care, more compassion, more kindness, more truth, more understanding, because they are confused. They don't know the reality. They don't know the science. They don't know the personal experience. So I can teach them, I know this. So one force is that, and that's more like physical, emotional, right? That's a big one. And then the other one is cognitively, is the mind, is our mind influenced by the society and the environment of, hey, fit in, be careful with their perception of you, be careful with their response, respect hierarchies, right? This one is more cognitively. Even you said there is something in the back of my mind. And this is always at play in healthy people and in those who develop a temporary dysfunction. I do believe that everyone can heal from FND. So those who develop a temporary dysfunction get caught up in this contradiction mind-body fight. So it's so important to recognize and harmonize. So let's try to harmonize and see if we can make it happen. But sometimes it takes weeks or months or years, and it's okay. So you have a very powerful creative mind. The human mind can make us go to the moon, go to Mars. It's like so creative. So you have that power within your mind. What would be the middle way between, I can say something. What would I say? Considering the opinion of the mind, well, be careful. Make sure you respect the hierarchy. Don't ruin their perception that they have of you, but make it even better. Do it in a way where they value you, they respect you, they listen, they appreciate your opinion. So here you are with these infinite possibilities. You're feeling your body, you're feeling your emotions, you're listening to your mind. And you're taking a pause to allow for the perfect scenario. What would you say?
I'm feeling surprised because I didn't go into this conversation with this scenario in mind. And I forgot that I actually did address it different. I did address it, but not in the moment. And I was thinking about the moment, so I forgot I had addressed it. I don't know if I addressed it the right way, but I do think it was kind of a middle ground of showing respect. And what I did is I didn't make it targeted or specific to that moment, but I created kind of a video presentation about FND in the context of nursing, of how to support patients with functional seizures, and other presentations and kind of the different factors that develop into the development of FND and kind of the providers that play a role in how they can contribute, and kind of common myths and kind of debunked those. But it was a really short video because I didn't, no one has time for like hour-long videos. And then the nursing director sent it out to everyone. What I like about that approach that I did was it wasn't targeted to those people and recognizes it was kind of a system thing. And it didn't feel like I was calling them out. I think it could have been more personal though. Like I think I could have talked about the personal impact on me and why this was important to me rather than just kind of focusing on scientific aspects. But yeah, I don't know if that was the right approach. I also think I'm trying to think of ways I can handle it in the moment, but also address kind of the systems thing. And I think it's important to do both. And in that moment, I could have just said, like, kind of just not called them out, but redirected the conversation in a way, like talked about something else without, because that's what I had done in the past when other nursing assistants would talk about patients in a way that I felt was disrespectful. I would just change the conversation topic without making it clear that I was like uncomfortable or calling them out. And I think that would have been an okay approach instead of just letting the conversation continue and kind of sitting there angry. You know what I mean? Doesn't feel like the best outcome for anyone.
Yes, and I must say that there is not a single one best answer for
Yeah.
these things. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you create whatever feels good for you in the moment. As long as it satisfies mind, body, emotions, spirituality, life's mission, then you're good. It's a stepwise process in life. Perfection takes
Mhm.
time. So we take one step, we take another step. Then if we feel like, oh, this is good, then we stay there. Maybe 10 years later, we change. So we want to do other things. It has to
Mhm.
be fun. It has to be joyful. It has to fit your personality because it's about you, right? Like life is about each one of us. My life is about me. Yeah, others too, but it has to be good for me. Otherwise, I'm going to get sick. Life is about you, so it has to satisfy you. Others too, but mainly you.
Mhm.
So that's perfect. Now, I want to point out because I like to challenge people. I like to challenge myself. I like to challenge people in the world. And challenge and change, they go together, right? We challenge ourselves to like do some weights and then our muscles change, they become bigger, right? We challenge ourselves to rest more. And then our brain feels so relaxed, like zen, right? So challenge and change go together. In order to change, we need to know our challenges. Challenges are internal.
Mhm.
How do you notice the internal challenges? Let's say just a game. Okay, well, next time I'm gonna go to them and I'm gonna say, you know, I overheard you laughing. And I am an FND advocate. I have all these years of experience. And I am sorry, but I must say something to you personally. Like, no, no laughing. Like really. You cannot laugh about these things like, I don't know, going going to them. Go, like
Mhm.
just consider this scenario and feel the internal obstacles, the internal resistance, and tell me what are you feeling in your body. It's a game.
Yeah, I definitely feel like more tense and kind of reproached, kind of like I want to like pull back, you know what I mean? Like create
Exactly.
distance from that thought
Ex-
physically.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is a little game just to point out to people and for us to remember, remind ourselves that whenever we want to achieve something, even if you like someone in your program and you're like, okay, today's the day where I'm gonna start a conversation with this person.
Okay.
Anything, like giving a concert in the middle of your break, taking your guitar, whatever we want to do that is bold and new and different, we have these internal resistances and obstacles that we must overcome to get to our new goals and our new self. The first step to overcome the internal energy that holds us back and makes us tense is just to notice it and get comfortable with it. That's all. We notice, we shake it off. We're like, okay, that was a test. Relax, little by little. How is the exercise? How are you feeling it?
You know, what's interesting is I had that physical response, but I also like, once I kind of like moved on a little bit, I had kind of a cognitive response of I think it's twofold. Like I acknowledge I play a role in that response and how my belief system about how I want to be perceived. But I also think there's an element of that response that actually really shows the impact stigma has on patients. The fact that I'm that resistant to disclosing that I have FND to healthcare professionals, even as, a healthcare professional in that context, the fact that I'm that convinced that it would make the situation and their perception of me that much different, um, and that it would be a negative perception rather than a like, a lot of times when healthcare professionals talk about personal experience and how that informs their practice, it's viewed as a positive thing, right? It's viewed as like, oh, they're more empathetic. They're brought into this based off of their own experiences. That's not the reaction I believe a lot of professionals would have to hearing I have FND.
Yes.
And I think that that does speak to how like ingrained the stigma is against FND patients and the impact it has on them. And also I need to acknowledge, like, yes, I play a role in that as well, and how I want to be perceived and my level of comfortability with talking about my own health in that way. That also is a factor, but I also think the amount of stigma is also a factor in that response, if that makes sense.
Yes. And observe what you're doing. You have discovered your own road, your own resistances, you're identifying them, and you're voicing them here.
Mhm.
So you're already changing the pattern. You
Yeah.
identified it, you brought it up, you disclose it, and you're like, okay, hold it a second. Let me look at this. Let me change this. So this is it for all of us, for all of you out there. Identify. Why? Because we can change the system.
Mhm.
And it's also healing when we disclose our true selves, like a queen, like a boss, like a leader.
Say that. Oh my God.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
That is a queen
You
move. I agree.
you can
Yes.
and practice it. And I feel that this is a good moment to start wrapping up the conversation. This is a good exercise for everyone. How do we
Mhm.
empower ourselves in our true experience and say, like, hey, wait a second. I have run into this FND problem and I can tell you so much about it. I can help you prevent it because I know what has caused it. I can do social advocacy. I am becoming a pioneer in community building and in changing the system. And why? Because I know it from the inside out. This is my story. I get my own functional symptoms and I get them sometimes too. So, how do we empower ourselves through the reality of our existence? How do we express the reality of our experience like a queen, like a boss, like a leader? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, but I suspect that you will think about it and maybe you'll send us a writing with a few ideas on how can we do this, because remember, for me, FND, it goes from illness to healing to empowering to social change. Like for
Mhm.
me, everyone who has had any functional problems can climb that ladder and can change the systems to prevent illnesses so we can build better societies for all and leave an amazing legacy and have fun while we do it. That's what I believe.
I like that. I like that ladder.
Uh-huh. Okay, so any final words to close? And I would like to know how are you feeling in your body, in your emotions. I feel excited. I feel energized. I feel that we're into something really big and good. How are you feeling over there?
I think I'm feeling like a little lighter, or I don't know if inspired is the right word. But what I was worried about this conversation is it kind of feels like it's so deep in the system that it's hard to see like a way out, if that makes sense. And it's easy as an FND patient to hyperfixate on experiences of stigma and experiences of almost being a victim to that stigma. I don't know if that's the right word. Um, but I like the way it shifted to the latter of using your own experiences to make a shift. And also I think it's important to recognize as much as stigma exists and is still prevalent, there is a lot of change happening right now, and there are more conversations. And I have seen that as a patient just in the last 4 years of the perceptions healthcare providers have of FND. It hasn't all shifted. Like, I still have negative interactions with providers, but the number of interactions and the extent to interactions has changed. And I think it is thanks to that ladder in the last 4 years of people doing exactly what you're describing. And so shifting my perception of self from victim to playing a role in that, in an active role in that.
Exactly. That's an amazing, fruitful, helpful last recommendation. There are opposite, contrasting experiences. Don't fixate on the negative, on the big, on the heavy, on the fight. Observe it, but also look at the other side. Look at the other perspective. The inspiration, the accomplishments, the opportunities to excel, to change, to influence. That balance, that fluidity of our experience, that's what makes us healthy. That's
Mhm.
what function is. A little bit here, a little bit there. This is a great moment to end with this advice. Okay, thank you, Teja. Thank you, everyone, and stay tuned for more. I will be posting this and more very soon. I promise. Thank you, Teja.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.